Hey everyone, welcome back to the On My Way podcast. A few days ago, we were joined by Peter Piñón. He is a licensed professional counselor and was gracious enough to stop by and have a conversation with us about mental health and answer all the questions we had about that. And so we hope that you find this as helpful as we did. And thank you again for listening. Enjoy the episode. Mr. Peter Piñón, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well. Thank
Doing
you.
Good.
How are you?
Doing well.
Good,
We're really glad to have you on the episode today.
Yeah, me too.
Will you tell us a little bit about yourself? I know you're a married man. You have kids.
Yes.
I know you have a good bunch at home.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
A good crew for sure. My wife, Lindsay, we've been married for almost 10 years.
Yeah.
So that will be in December. We'll celebrate the 10-year mark. And then we have 4 kids. Paxton, he's 8. Pierce is 6. Leela's 5.
Yeah.
And Pace, the youngest, is 3.5.
Oh, that's so fun.
Yeah, man.
I love
great.
big families. I'm like, that's like one of my dreams. I think that's the coolest.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah, in Mexican world,
Yes.
it's not really that big. Both
No
of my
kidding.
parents are one of 8.
Oh, yeah.
So we just went 50%. I'm like, you know what? We're just going
Yeah.
to, we'll keep. So it's a small family in the Piñón family. But yes, with everybody over here in our hood, 2.5 kids is the national average.
Right.
So it's a big family.
That's true. That's just a good old fashioned compromise you guys did there.
For sure.
Do you ever get comments from your parents like, y'all are gonna stop at 4? Like, or no? Yeah.
No, they're chill. Yeah, they understand.
Yeah. Well, cool, man. And so you are a licensed professional counselor.
I am.
Yeah. And what made you want to pursue that?
Yeah, I think when I've thought about it here recently, one thing was I remember being in my dad's, who's a pastor. I was in his office and we were looking at his books, and I pointed to that one. I said, Dad, what's that one? And he said, well, that's pastoral counseling. I said, well, what's that? He said, before service and after service, and when we get invited to people's houses and they give us food, and we're at the table and you guys are watching cartoons, that's what I'm doing. I'm having pastoral counseling.
Yeah.
And we're just talking about biblical principles and how to practically apply them. And I said, wow, can I just do that instead?
Yeah.
Because I don't like being on stage and speaking in front of people. I was very shy, introverted. So he's just like, yeah, of course you could do that. But I was like 9, 10 years old then.
Yeah.
But that idea was there. And then it wasn't until I was interim youth pastor. This was at his request too, at his church.
Sure, yeah.
So he's like, hey, do you think you could just watch the youth group for a little bit?
Yeah.
And I took over, and very quickly I realized that I was in over my head. There was just a lot of issues. I mean, all of the issues that you can think of right now were in the church. I just didn't know. When I was one of the students, I didn't know that those things were going on. Now I'm the guy that's in charge, and I'm hearing about the different things that were going on with drugs and gangs and abortion and premarital sex and all kinds of things. I said, wow, I don't know what's going on here. Yeah. And there's a lot more that I need to know in order to pastor well.
Wow. And so that started you on your journey.
So then I said, well, I'm going to be a pastoral counselor.
Yeah.
And went to college and got my associates in biblical studies.
Yeah.
And I said, there's still more. There's still more. And I prayed about it, and I felt like the Lord was like, well, you can get professionally trained. I think that would be, you want more. Yeah. I'm calling you to more. Yeah. Wow. So I got my bachelor's in counseling. Yeah. And then it was the same thing as like upping the ante. It's like, well, there's still more. Yeah. If you got a master's in clinical psychology and counseling, you could learn even more. And again, the fear for me was I had labeled myself a non-school person. Like, I'm not a school person. I don't like tests. I got test anxiety. Yeah. I don't like writing papers, all that stuff. So I didn't think I could actually make it. I would love to learn the stuff. Yeah. But I didn't think I could make it in the program. But the Lord helped me. Yeah. And I mean, it's a long story, but basically absolutely. I made it. And so I don't think I actually admitted to myself that I wanted to be a professional counselor until I had graduated with my master's.
Oh, wow.
And then I still was very like to myself about it. And I would tell people like, I don't know if I'm going to be a professional or not, because the state has this big test that you have to take,
Oh, wow.
which regardless of your program, you have to take this test. And I'm like, man, I don't know if I can pass that test. I'd heard all of the horror stories. And so I'm like, man, I don't know if I can do this. So I take the test. I pass it the first time. I had known people that I looked up to that had taken 2 or 3 times to pass it.
Oh, wow.
So when I passed it the first time, I was just shocked. I could not believe it. And it was that moment of sitting in my vehicle with the paper that said passed. I'm like, I'm going to be a professional counselor. I was already one, but it was that moment of like, this dream is actually going to happen.
Whoa.
Because I didn't even want to admit to myself that that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah.
That is so
crazy.
cool. It's so cool to hear even just the like compressed version of like even the Lord planting a seed in your mind as a child and then seeing it come to fruition, and now you being on the field and actually tangibly doing it. Yeah. That must be wild to experience.
It's super fun.
Dude, that's incredible.
I enjoy it.
Well, we've got a couple questions that I would love your counselor's perspective on.
Cool. Let's go.
And honestly, today might end up becoming a counseling session. And if it does, then we can just bill North Place Young Adults.
It's us and our listeners. Yeah, of course. So.
But I do have some questions. Honestly, some of these are some of my own personal questions. And some of these are ones that I'd like to ask on behalf of all young adults.
Yeah.
And so if any of these spark a deeper conversation or topic, then we can scrap all the questions and just go there.
Yeah. Well, I'm following you, bro.
Okay.
You lead us.
Sweet. Okay. Well, we'll start simple today. I'll preface with this is one of the Andrew Fernandez questions.
Okay.
Because most people probably know the answer to this one. But okay, so is there a difference in the titles of counselor, therapist, and psychiatrist? Because I'm pretty sure I've used these all interchangeably. Yeah. And so that was,
That's good. So therapist is probably the most general term of all of those that you mentioned. So that's somebody who does therapy. And specifically, the whole name would be psychotherapist. Psycho meaning mind, and so therapist of the mind. And a psychiatrist is someone that specializes in medication.
Okay.
So, but also diagnostic, and they are an actual medical doctor, or MD is what we would say that they are. So they specialize in medication and diagnostics, but then they can also do therapy. A lot of them don't do therapy because there's so much of a need. You know, there's the population of therapists. There's so many of them that can't do medication. So a lot of times that's where their time has to go. And so they could be a therapist. A counselor could also be a therapist. A licensed clinical social worker could also be a therapist. And a psychologist is somebody who usually specializes in diagnostics. They don't do medication. They are the ones that are going to administer a lot of the IQ tests, a lot of the autism or ADHD. So they specialize in when diagnoses are not clear, they're going to come in and they're going to help rule out and rule in the different things that they're going. And then from there, most of the time, the MDs and the PhDs in the psychology field will refer to people at the licensure level, like me. A licensed professional counselor or a licensed clinical social worker. Big answer, right?
No, yeah, it is. It is.
But we're all therapists,
right?
But most of the time, since people at the licensure master's degree level, are usually the ones that are doing the majority of the therapy.
I see. So you guys are in the face-to-face situations with people.
Yeah, and a lot of us, it's because we chose that.
Right.
I mean, I love that. That's that's my sweet spot.
Yeah.
I don't want to do more paperwork than I already do.
No kidding.
I love having conversations. That's what is my favorite.
That's awesome. Man. Okay. Okay. So that helps me. I always kind of use the three interchangeably. Yeah. And so, okay.
I did too.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. And then you got shrink in the mix as well. And it's like, what is that? And so, okay, cool. All right. So that helps me. Okay. Here's one. Do you believe everyone, like rule of thumb, should see a counselor at some point in their lives? Or do you believe it's only necessary when someone's gone through a crucial life change or trauma or, what have you, something that kind of shakes someone's world up? Or is it something that like you would subscribe to, or you would suggest to everybody?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing because I know a lot of people that would say everybody needs to do counseling. And then, the old school of thought, maybe like our parents' generation, I'm throwing myself in there with you, even though I'm probably quite a bit older, but it was like psychosis. So you were either hearing voices, seeing things that weren't there. So therapy, psychotherapy specifically, was for people at the far end of the spectrum that were dealing with psychotic issues.
Right.
And because things changed and master's level practitioners started doing work, now there is this thing called therapy and counseling. And it can be by choice. It can be just to help you. You're struggling with something and you can work through something. So we have a continuum. If I'm going to use my left hand to represent diagnosis, mental illness, that's what therapy is for. Therapy was designed for people with major mental disorders or mental illness. And then counseling is more for issues. So disorders have a specific group of issues, and counseling could be for just one. Like let's say you have anxious thoughts. You can still go to work, you can still go to sleep, like you're still functioning, but you have that one symptom or one sign or one issue of the thought side of it. Well, that's what counseling can do. You don't have to have all of the criteria or the group of symptoms. You can just go for an issue. So I think if people don't have an issue and they want to deal with it, you can go to counseling.
Right.
And then there's coaching, because and that's for issues, or like you just have a goal. You want to accomplish something and you want to work more efficiently or effectively, or you want to be able to think on a higher level, better at problem solving, decision making, life, business, strategy, different things like that. That's why somebody would choose a coach. But that's the whole spectrum. And so I think that all of those can be confidential. And so here's what I will say is I think everybody should experience at least one confidential conversation in their life, because we're going to, especially if we're in a church setting, we're going to meet somebody where we're going to say, hey, it would probably be good for you to sit down with a professional and have a conversation. And so we're not necessarily saying that they need to have a long-term relationship with a therapist, but we're just saying, hey, it might be good for you to have an evaluation conversation with them, because we get to the point where our own self-awareness is not going to help us assess. We need to share our awareness with somebody else and then have them help us assess and make that determination. But it would probably be good to sit with a professional and then them say, hey, look, I don't see any cause for further therapy. You might want to do some counseling or coaching, but that's up to you. So even that, it feels healthy to have made that decision collaboratively instead of, sometimes in my Mexican world, it's like, I don't want to go to the doctor. Well, why? Because I don't want them to tell me how sick I am. It's like, maybe you should probably go then. Like, let's at least find out. I mean, that's my generation is a lot more open to medical care, but, it's still hard sometimes for us to be open to mental health care.
And why do you think that is? Like, why is it so stigmatized, like seeking counseling? Because I come from a Brazilian background as well. Like, my parents are Brazilian, so also like the Latino background, and I think generationally, no matter what nationality, there's some that are just more naturally open to it. But like, why do you think it is so stigmatized? And like, obviously we're coming out of it a little bit, but it has been in the past.
I think there could be a lot of theories out there. I haven't heard any that I really agree with. I think that one reason is that it probably goes back to the fact that we introduced psychotherapy for the most extreme mental issues that can exist. Delusions and hallucinations. People that were a danger to themselves, people that were a danger to other people. So that's what people have in their minds, and they're self-assessing against that. They're saying, here I am with my anger issues or my anxiety or the depressive episodes, but it's not that.
Yeah.
It's not like A Beautiful Mind, if you've ever seen like
Yes.
some of the movies that
Right.
portray mental illness, and it's like, that's not what I'm experiencing,
Right.
so I'm good.
Uh-huh.
So that's probably part of it, is that we're over exaggerating what it would take for us to go get some help.
Right.
So that's one. The other thing I think for a lot of us is that we haven't actually had the conversation with somebody. So we don't know what it's like.
Yeah.
So it's stigmatized because it's unknown.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a lot of times people sit across from me just like you're sitting across from me right now.
Yeah.
And they're thinking, oh man, he's probably got like 12, to 20 pages of notes
Right.
in his head about all the things that are wrong with me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's just, I'm not a superhuman.
Yeah,
I just want to get to know you. We'll
Yeah.
collaboratively work together and figure out, what are some of the issues
Yeah.
that you'd like to work on. I'm not going to force you to work on them. I want to know what you want to work on, and we'll start there. I mean, all of us have issues,
Yeah. Right.
if we're honest.
Absolutely. I've dude, I have memory. So I've gotten better about, so I don't, yeah, okay, this will be weird, but I don't bite my nails anymore. I bite my cuticles now, but I
Yeah.
have memory of just biting my nails at like 7 years old. Like I have like early memory of like, and like just having just anxiety, which I don't even know where it came from.
Sure.
And so absolutely, like that's definitely something that I think even for me, and like anybody who knows me, probably even the people sitting in this room, can know me to be somebody who gets a little antsy, and like especially when a lot's happening around me.
And
But-
that's normal.
Yeah.
It's normal, but normal just means that if you take all the population, and you describe all their behaviors and all the issues that they could have,
Right.
normal is the mid-range
Right.
of all of that. And so it is normal,
Yeah.
but it doesn't mean that you don't have to deal with that, that
Yeah.
you don't have to, that you couldn't work on that. Again,
Right.
like you said, you used to bite your nails and now
Yeah.
it's cuticles.
Yeah.
Like, you wouldn't need to keep on doing that.
Yeah.
But if it's not that big of a deal,
Right.
like, it's like anything else, it's opportunity cost. It's going to
Yeah.
take time.
Absolutely.
And if you're still able to do your job, if you're still
Yeah.
able to have relationships, we're looking
Like,
at,
bite away,
at
pal.
functionality. It is a way that you cope. It's a
Yeah.
way that you handle what you have to do. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not throwing shade at you
No,
for
no,
that.
I know.
Some
Yeah.
of us grab ice cream on the way home.
Yeah,
Some of us, chew gum excessively. There's a lot of different things that we do to kind of make it.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. It's like, and then you don't even realize that's a thing. Like until one day you look back and you're like, oh yeah, that's probably just a coping mechanism that I've just developed over time. And
Because again,
it's
if you're
wild.
looking at your nails or if you're looking at your cuticles, you're focused on that.
It's like an escapism almost, right?
Well, it is that.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
But different people could also use it differently. So
Yeah.
for some it could be escape. For some it feels kind of mindless. you
Right.
know? So
Right.
you're not focused on your hands, but you're through habit you're just doing that.
Wow. Yeah.
So there's a different range in that. But I'm not going to get too nerdy
No.
on that yet.
It's okay. Don't worry about it. No, that is good. That's really good. I have this question that I wonder if you. So okay. Do you keep a checklist for your own mental health? Like almost like checking for vital signs, right? Where you go down a checklist and see if there are certain alarms or red flags that are going off that help you know whether or not you're doing hot mentally. Like, do you keep
Hot being good?
Like
or,
good, yes.
Okay.
Hot, yes.
Cool. I'm not super cool, so I
No,
didn't
that's
know.
okay. Like,
Yeah, I'm hot.
yeah, exactly. Do you have anything like that like that maybe could help somebody listening like that to know? Okay, if like these vital signs are showing, they're like these alarms are going off, then that helps me know that I might not be doing really good right now.
I use a tool that I learned from the theory of solution-focused therapy and specifically solution-focused brief therapy in case anybody wants to look it up.
Okay.
There's a lot of super cool ideas in that. But I adapted it for myself because, again, you asked me about what I use. I recommend using it to my clients and the people that I work with and walk with too. But what you do is you take 0 and you say, if 0 represents this and 10 represents this, where are you in relationship to that, to the 0 and the 10? Okay. So if you go to the doctor, they do this and they say, hey, if 0 is no pain and 10 is the most pain, where's your pain right now? And what that does is it connects all the major parts of the brain together, and it gives you at least a representation of where your self-awareness is for that moment. Yeah. So what I do is I say, if 0 represents the worst I have ever been in my life, not just mental health, but holistically, because I'm looking at all of it, but I'm using my mental health to actually check it. 0 is the worst and 10 is the best. Where am I today? Yeah. And right then, like as soon as I said that to you just now, 7 popped up in my head. Yeah. 7 popped up in my head. And that's, and just about, if ever I feel different, I'll check in on that scale. Right. And that helps me just to know that if I go below 5, I really need to sit down and do some journaling in that way. But most of the time, I'm between 5 and 10. Okay. That's where my natural range. So that's where I think different people have to put their own kind of alarm system on where is it going to trigger? Where do they like to be? And I relate it to people with their gas tank. Some people like being on full. 3/4. Then there's some people at a half tank they like to fill up. Some people like it to be, once it goes, they get to a quarter, they fill up again. And some people, they actually just let it get to the alarm. And some people want it to get to 0, and then reserve. They challenge themselves to see how far they can go before they need to put gas. And we can get that same way with our health. And you decide. Obviously, the alarm's going to go off way over here towards the worst, but you can. I'm setting it at half. At 5, I want to make sure I'm looking, make sure there's not something else I can address, and obviously my relationship with God's in there, my relationship with my wife, all 4 of my kids, my best friends, my physical health. How am I eating? How am I sleeping? All of that is in there. I can do a deep dive once I know that 7 or 5 or 3.
Wow, that is so good. That's so good. I wonder with with the global trauma that we've just all gone through the last 2 years, how many people are just operating out of their reserve, like out of that almost sub-zero realm. Do you see a lot of that on your day, throughout your counseling, I even wonder what that looks like for our young adults population, how many of them are operating from that? I don't know if you see a lot of that whenever you're counseling.
Well, you think about your range. I think you guys try to target 18 to 24, 25, right? And what's interesting about that is that the neurological system, your brain, is actually still developing until 25, 26. So your brain is not even, it's all there. Right. It's all there. I'm not saying, I'm not talking about intelligence. I'm talking about settling into the neural pathways and the ways that everything works. Right. So, 2 years in that range is a big deal. Think about the difference between a 16-year-old and an 18-year-old. Yeah. Right. That's a big difference. They're thinking about different things. 18-year-old and a 21-year-old. Yeah. 18-year-old and a 25-year-old. So these are major developmental times where it was not normal. It was not business as usual. Right. So a lot of people got kind of introduced to adulthood when the world was in survive mode. Right. Yeah. So they're learning right now what it is to live in this world. Yeah. And they're without having to be in survive mode. And it's kind of like when you get an injury that's not life-threatening and you just kind of push through. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, 3 weeks, 4 weeks down the road, you realize, hey, my ankle's not hurting me anymore. Yeah. And that's people are noticing, hey, I'm not in thrive mode, or I'm not in survive mode anymore. I'm experiencing the thrive mode. I'm feeling like I've never felt this way before. So when we talk about the worst and the best, they're feeling like I'm experiencing higher levels of best than I ever had. I didn't know that this existed.
Yeah.
I didn't know life could be without this. Again, not they were alive before, but they weren't in adulthood before, or they weren't in this phase. You know, some of them graduated, college, or started their careers in the last 2 years. So they're discovering what life looks like.
Right. Yeah. And that, I think that like late teens to early young adulthood is such a transitionary time that everything is thrown up into question, and like everything is like all of your principles and the things you've grown up knowing as concrete becomes a big question mark. And then not to mention when the whole world is upside down, like we just faced. And so
there's no other time that is that transitional except for middle school.
Oh, wow.
So middle school is that bridge between elementary and high school. And, you know, you see the middle schoolers at the youth ministry and, you know, they're like, oh, I need deodorant now. What? You know, I got to comb my hair and I got to do my homework and I have multiple classes and not just one teacher. So there's so much that middle schoolers are having to adjust to. That's the gap between that is big as it is between finishing high school, either starting college or finishing college. It's like there's so much that you have to do, except it's not getting oriented into multiple classes. You're getting oriented to multiple phases of life or multiple facets of life, all these different areas. Now you're having to think about your finances and your car and rent and cell phone and all of these different things that you have to juggle at the same time.
Right. Man, that is wild.
So you're exactly right. It's a lot.
Yeah, it's a ton. It's insane to think about. And it's just like I'm always wondering about the future and what that's going to create in us. But I think it's just cool. It's cool to see, like you said, like people are starting to kind of heal almost. Like there's like the time is beginning to, you know, for some, you know, for some are still very much, I think, in grief.
Oh, yeah, sure.
But yeah, it's cool. I was even talking to my younger brother. He was like, it's cool because, you know, during COVID, you saw a lot of people start to even just physically like start to kind of naturally, right? Like everyone was on the same boat. A lot of people started to kind of, you know, let themselves go a little bit. Like just and a lot of that was just the, you know, the byproduct of our situation. And he was like, and I've noticed like so many people, and this is just our small circle, like are starting to really pick it back up. Pick it back up physically, you know, getting back into the gym, taking nutrition into mind again, and all those things. And we were just thinking, like, kind of pondering on that. We're like, oh yeah, totally. Like that is a cool thing that's happening. And maybe that's our church context. And, you know, this is like a very life-giving community, but it is cool to begin to see kind of time beginning to, and I think the Lord in a lot of ways begin to bring healing back to, I think, society as a whole, because
we want that. I think it's built into our DNA,
right, to
want to experience thrive mode, to not only say, what am I going to do today, fight, flight, or freeze,
right? Like
we got to get beyond that to say, I want to fight against a bigger problem,
right?
And or I'm not fighting against anything. We still feel like we're in that mode of trying to survive, and now it's like, no, I need to figure out where I'm going to go to school,
right,
or where I'm going to work, or who I'm going to date or marry,
right,
and where I'm going to go for social time, and all of that. Those are all things, and it's good. It's a good sign.
Yes.
So I think it's more than just your circle
right.
that's experiencing that. A lot of people have shared that with me. That's
for
awesome.
Sure. Come on, that's awesome. That's exciting.
Mm-hmm.
I have one that I was interested to hear your perspective on, and I've got a little bit of a preface to it, but so I feel like old school, like church and Christians, like we've already talked about it a little bit today, like where we like the stigmatization and all that of mental health, and you could probably peg a past generation of Christians, not all Christians, but I think there was a population that maybe you could almost say, I'm not a huge fan of this term, but they almost over spiritualized things, or they mishandled people who had, sometimes clinical mental illness or like just chemical imbalances, and they, there were certain probably people, leaders. There were leaders in church, workers who would say they didn't have enough faith, or you know what I mean, would almost peg it on the person. But I think I feel, especially in young Christians that I'm growing up around, that I'm seeing more and more of this thing where it's almost like, it feels like we've maybe begun to almost overcorrect and begin to say, well, like mental health and mental illness is almost like this sacred, untouchable ground that we can't ever imply there's anything spiritual going on. And I think as Christians, we know like the spiritual realm like is a very real thing, and oftentimes our behavioral patterns are opening, opportunities, right? The Bible says give the enemy give no opportunity for the flesh, right? And so I wonder if you think maybe we are continuing to over spiritualize, or maybe we're under spiritualizing things, and maybe there are times where Christians maybe we've begun to take a lot of that out of it and overcorrect, and maybe we need to take accountability for some of the our behavioral patterns and things like that. I don't know. It's a long question, but
no, it's an important conversation, and I think because it is a long question, it's a long question because you're trying to summarize a discussion that's happening. A discussion between generations, a discussion between denominations,
right?
Of how some people are saying, hey, you know what, you feel depressed. Well, that's discouragement, and that you need to pray that away.
Right.
And you need to take dominion and authority, which, again, I agree that we need to do that.
Right.
But then, over here, the other extreme is you need to validate it and say this is something real. There's something neurological here. Because I've heard pastors tell me that they have told people that are suicidal not to take antidepressants. And they've said that because that it was just demonic, and that they needed to just pray and either cast it out, or maybe it was oppression and those things. And there was something neurological that was there. And they would never look at a cancer patient and say, don't do chemo, because the cancer is demonic. And it's hard because all sin, in my opinion, it comes from the fall. And we've been dealing with it in different ways since then. And I think in terms of a holistic perspective, when we overcorrect because we're not willing to take the time to find the precise place to land.
Right.
My dad treated me like this, so I'm going to be like this. My mom was like this, so I'm going to be like that. So we move from one end of the spectrum to the other end of the spectrum without getting healing. Right. So we say, I'm either going to eat healthy or I'm going to binge eat. Right. Instead of saying, hey, you know what? You can eat healthy all week, and then maybe on the weekend you get a chocolate cake. Or just a piece, not the whole cake. Just a piece, and you enjoy yourself. So there's different. I'm not preaching moderation. And I'm not even preaching balance, that you have this on this hand and this on the other hand. I'm preaching appropriateness, that it takes wisdom. Wisdom is the answer to that. Is you have to look at the signs. I would have no issue saying, hey, well, let's get this person an evaluation conversation. Let's see let's see what comes up. And most of the time, if it is a mental illness, it will fall into the groupings of the criteria. If it's all over the place, there are ways to discern, to pray, Lord, help us. What is this? But either extreme is an oversimplification. And we're moving to a place where we feel more comfortable. And you're exactly right. The generations kind of tend to lean in that way. And so to integrate, and as the body of Christ, we need to say, yes, there is. I have never seen, at least in a person that has a relationship with Jesus' life, somebody that has mental illness, that the enemy has not tried to take advantage of. He's very, very good at pushing his finger in the wound that is already there. So I'm not saying it's caused by evil. But, think about any issue that we have ever had. If you have a broken leg, the enemy is going to come at you. and get you discouraged. Oh, now you can't play basketball. Your senior year is gone, or whatever it is. And so people can get really discouraged mentally and emotionally, behaviorally, spiritually, relationally, whatever the issue is.
Right.
And there is a spiritual element to it, in the sense that Satan is always trying to get us disconnected from God.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. That is so good. Oh, man. Okay. So I think this might be, we might wrap with this one today. Cool. But for anyone struggling with mental health today, do you have any practical steps that they can take today as they're listening to this conversation?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, because I would say that it needs to happen in the context of the body of Christ. But the first place to start is with you are a part of the body of Christ.
Yeah.
To be able to answer that question.
Right.
I said I'm at a 7 from 0 to 10.
Right.
I would be interested in our listeners, like, where are they today?
Yeah.
Where are they right now? And it would be interesting for them to connect with somebody that they trust and say, hey, Andrew, I feel like I'm at a 7 right now. Where do you think I'm at right now? You've seen me at my worst. You've seen me at my best. Yeah. Where do you think I am? I feel like I'm at a 7. And then you compare notes, and not in a judgmental way, but in a, hey, let's support each other in that. And I don't even have to tell you all the reasons why I'm at a 7 right now. Right. Some people might be like, what? Yeah. The guest speaker's at a 7? We should have paid for a 10.
Yeah, right.
What's this guy doing?
Right.
But there's a lot of details that can come later on through relationship. But I think you got to admit it to yourself and admit it to Jesus through prayer, and then talk to a trusted friend. I think that's important, because that's the trifecta that you're going to take into a counseling situation. The hardest thing to do is to have a confidential conversation, an evaluation conversation with somebody, with a professional, and then leave that and have no one to talk about it.
Wow.
Say, hey, how'd your counseling session go? Yeah. How was therapy? And I'll tell you right now, probably 50% of the blessing from my counseling sessions that I have with my counselor, so my personal counselor, they go... like 50% of the blessing and benefit of it is me talking to my wife, is me talking to my best friends about how it went. And as I'm talking about how this conversation went, I'm having even more insights and more growth, because, I'm able to evaluate what happened in those conversations.
Yeah. I heard someone say one time that counseling is almost like getting a PhD on yourself, which I was like, that's such a cool thought. I don't know if that's like exactly what it's like, but I think
it certainly can't be exactly, but man, that's a great goal. Like I would love to be the expert on all of my clients, and to be able to study them and have them study them. Yeah. And that's what I love, to be able to listen to people. Right. Even sometimes at first, I'm listening to them better than they listen to themselves. Yeah. And then after a while, I'm like, did you hear what you said? Right. And they're like, what? I'm like, say it again. They're like, I don't even remember. Yeah. I'm like, oh, wow. I'm so glad I was here. You said that this was that. And they're like, I did? I'm like, yes, I wrote it down. That's what you said. And I'm not saying it judgmentally. I'm just saying, listen to that.
Listen to it. Yeah.
Now that can inform what you decide about the future. Yeah. But you talk sometimes and you don't listen to yourself. Wow. So if you're not listening, then you're not learning. Wow. Once you listen, then you can learn some things. Okay, maybe I could change this, change that. Yeah. So yes, I love that idea of the PhD. I think it's great. But I do want people to know that it would be optional. It could be that. Yes. But there are some people that go to counseling and it feels more forced, or they don't get all that they could out of it. Yes. And sometimes that's because it's not a good fit relationally. Right. Because it is a real relationship. There's no way around it. Right. We have to give ourselves to the other person. Right. So I think that's what's so important. Is I don't think you need somebody that is actually practicing from a biblical perspective, like saying, hey, all of your issues have to line up in the Bible. Right. They can use a professional perspective, but when that counselor or therapist has a relationship with Jesus,
Yes.
I think it allows it to be a body of Christ to body of Christ
Right.
connection.
Right.
That, I wouldn't do it any other way.
Yes.
I love that my counselor loves Jesus and prays for me, and I pray for him, and
Yeah.
I pray for all my clients. And I tell people all the time that they pay me to do therapy, counseling, and coaching, but I love them for free.
Oh,
No
wow.
one's making me love them,
Right.
and I pray for them for free. I
Yeah.
intercede. I fight for them spiritually
Come on.
in ways that I don't think they could pay me for that.
Wow.
I wouldn't know how to put a price on that.
Right.
I can regulate, hey, this is what a session is worth
Yeah.
in the
Right.
DFW area, because
Right.
that's where we live.
Yes.
But I don't know how much it would be to love somebody and to
Wow.
pray for them and to go to bat in the spiritual realm for God to bring healing and wholeness to them.
Wow. 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 Come on. That is so good. I'm blown away with the perspective that you've brought. For me personally, just listening, and I hope for everybody listening here today. Peter, is there anywhere we can maybe follow you online or on Instagram or anything like that that we can keep up with you and just keep gleaning more knowledge from you?
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
I would love to connect with any and all of you
Yeah.
that are listening. Peter Piñón is my name on Instagram, and I lead a company called Minds Connected, so multiple minds, connected.com. And that is, I do coaching, counseling, and therapy through that company, so they can sign up for the newsletter or to know about different classes and workshops that we have that go on. But yeah, I love getting messages from people saying, hey, I heard this and I have this question. I love questions. I don't know if you noticed. I love questions and thinking about them, and not that I have all the answers, but I think most of the time I'm like, yes, I've been thinking about that too. And I'm not sure, but here's some other things that we can talk about. So yeah, please hit me up, and let's keep growing.
Yes. Well, check him out on Instagram. Get acquainted with this guy, because I think I know it's going to be very very edifying and fruitful for everybody to know. So thank you so much. This has been an absolute pleasure, Peter Piñón. Thank you for joining us today. Hey y'all, thank you so much for stopping by and listening to our conversation today. It was so good having Peter with us, sharing his knowledge and wisdom on mental health as a counselor. I know I have been benefited from it. 2 Corinthians 3:18, I want to leave you with this. It says, and we all, with unveiled face, beholding the glory of the Lord, are being transformed into the same image, from one degree of glory to another. For this comes from the Lord, who is the Spirit. What does that mean? It means we are on our way. It means that as we continue to submit to God's will, as we continue to submit to the work that the Holy Spirit is doing in us, we're going from glory to glory. We're going from grace to grace. No matter what battle you're facing today, emotional, mental, relational, spiritual, whatever, the Holy Spirit is working in you. He's making you more like Jesus, and you are on your way. Thanks for listening today.